Here and we're unmuted. You know, it's Friday. Let's go, baby.
I even sent you a little DM there. Unmute your mic because anytime I mute it before the music comes on, because the music mutes it.
Well, the music doesn't. So on so that's the reason why I mute it. So just FYI.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it doesn't. So on Restream it does. For everybody who's watching out there, maybe this is an internal conversation, but yeah, Restream, anytime a video plays, it mutes it. But here I've noticed it doesn't mute it. So I mute it because I don't want to hear anything in the background and stuff like that. So I've been hearing you moving and fussing, but yeah, FYI.
So
that's the reason why
you hear me tapping and moving around when the music's playing?
That's why I mute you sometimes too. I'm like, all right, like, you're taking away from the music, my man. You're taking away.
This guy just doesn't stop. I'm trying to listen to the tunes here, man. What's wrong with this dude? Happy Friday, Ryan. Happy Friday. You know, today, I got to tell you, this chapter, reviewing it again last night. You know, they say everything happens for a reason, right? And last week we didn't get to chapter 4 when we wanted to, and I'm glad we got to it now because I'll be honest with you, brother, I had one of the worst days ever yesterday, but yet one of the greatest days.
Yeah.
And, you know, really good day from business, really good day from connecting, really good day from talking to some people, really good day for traction, but a horrible day health-wise. You know, I had to take Tylenol for the first time in like a week and a half. I literally ate one meal yesterday because my throat and my neck and my ear and the pain in my head was so intense. Had to lie down and shut my eyes. Like, it was just crazy how things just hit me at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And you can even probably hear it today. My voice still isn't back. And it was like I was cruising for this like victory right at the end of the day. It was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have the energy. I'm gonna be, and it just hit me, brother. And the day turned to hell. And I'm listening to the chapter last night again, and I'm preparing for this morning. And I needed this chapter last night in order to wake up this morning feeling the way I feel. Right? Like I would have woken up still frustrated with the past yesterday, allowing yesterday to control my morning. I believe if I hadn't have listened to this again last night, and I actually listened to the chapter again this morning, just to kind of reiterate that. So it's another testament to everything happens for a reason. And we didn't go through this chapter because chapter 5 wouldn't have given me the tidbits that I got to kind of sit in bed last night and go, okay, I know this. Yep. Consciously, we all know this. Like, if we attach ourselves to what happens today for tomorrow, we're living in the past. We're not living in the now, you know, and then obviously not in the future. But it really hit me because it was that negativity, that, you know, that pain, that suffering from the past keeps you locked today. And I'll tell you, you know, full transparency, when I was going through my recovery, Ryan, there were times when I would wake up and go, you know, why me? Like, I've done nothing wrong to people. There's people out there that kill people. There's people out there that like murder and rape and pillage and all this. And, you know, they're living their best life healthy as a horse. And here I am friggin' suffering on my deathbed. Right. So this chapter for me was really impactful. And it was even, and you know, we've talked about this before, but it was even more impactful yesterday than it was last week, if that makes sense. And I think it's because I was going through something at the time that needed this chapter to kind of wake me up.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's kudos to you for sharing as well. That's amazing to kind of think about, and I had like similar thoughts as well because last week we kind of glimmered on it where chapter 4 we didn't feel anything, and then I was reading it. I read it last night, and then I listened to it this morning, and it really did hit a point because like I and that's what I was telling a friend last night too. I was like, when you go through books or you read like different articles, even if it's an article itself, anything that's out there, any content that you consume, you're going to relate to it differently. Like, let's say a week from now, a month from now, even a minute from now, you're going to be in a different time space. And the one thing that I've kind of learned with, like, especially this chapter specifically, last week I kind of said, what lesson am I going to take in terms of like this book into practical in my life? And the one lesson I've taken, Dan, was that anything that I've thought of that is autopilot, whether it be driving, whether it be eating, whether it be doing notes or like preparing my day and stuff like that, I've stopped that. So I stopped thinking about the next thing. And I think I was kind of trained that way because I always talk about like James Clear Atomic Habits, and he talks about stacking habits. Right. So it's just that stacking. So it's just like, let's say your morning routine is like wash my face, brush my teeth, floss, and then use mouthwash. But when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm thinking about, getting that floss ready and getting the water because I got a water flosser. But now when I'm like brushing my teeth, I like go through each like tooth and like crevices and all that stuff. And I'm thoroughly enjoying like this now and understanding that. And the one thing that he said was that I related to was like when he was talking about negativity and just to like, what I love how about Eckhart is how blunt he is too, straightforward, sugarcoat anything. And the one thing he says, like, drop negativity. And then for everybody out there, we're thinking, you would think the next question would be like, how the hell do you just drop negativity? And then the next part is like, is asking him that question, how do you drop negativity? And he just says, well, if you have a hot coal in your hand, are you going to keep it? Are you going to keep it or are you just going to drop it? And then I thought to myself, I was like, that is so true. I had to like reflect a little bit too. And this week for me, it's been eye opening, I would say, Dan. I've had like
Yeah.
really cool conversations and really cool things kind of happen too that I'm like, holy, not holy crap, but I'm like, okay, this is something. It's preparing me for something, like as Damon, one of our amazing friends here, he always kind of talks about, God is going to kind of like prepare, give you the weapons, to go into battle or something like that. And, I feel like, things not necessarily go into battle, but it's just like, okay, I'm being prepared for something. And I'm like, it's kind of weird. So I want to acknowledge that when you're kind of saying, I had to take Tylenol, but, you had to read this chapter, you had to go through that. And
Yeah.
it's like understanding that I can relate to that as opposed to when we both read it last week and we're like, hey, we really can't relate to this chapter. That's why we talked about and it's nothing wrong with this chapter. It's just different parts in our life. Like you and I resonated so much with chapter 3 last week. That's why we did the whole episode on it. Right. And I feel like we'll change the format. Instead of doing 2 chapters, we'll do 1 chapter. At least we can kind of like brainstorm our ideas and things like that. But Dan, I would like to ask you, what did you take from last week, and kind of put it into action, and what kind of testing, A/B
so
testing?
so it's interesting because you hit the nail right on the head there. The one thing I focused on is being in the now. So Brian, it's hilarious. When I brush my teeth, it's like I'm feeling my back molars as the toothbrush goes over it. I'm feeling every single tooth instead of just like looking
Yeah, yeah,
around,
yeah.
petting the dog or whatever. It's like I'm stopping and I'm feeling that. When I take a shower, I feel the water on my head and
Yes,
I just
to drop it.
feel, yeah. And I just like, and then I drop the temperature and I feel the colder water on my head. And then I'll go back to hot and then I'll go back to cold. It's like, and just really feeling, um, when I, for me, the biggest one was eating.
Mm,
Um, so, you know, it, it's funny. I remember speaking to you when I first started eating, and I said, like, you don't understand how tasting things for the first time in your mid 40s is incredible. And here's how quick we as humans separate from the now. When I first started eating, those first couple of things that went into my mouth, it's like I tasted every single texture. I felt the texture. I tasted every single spice. I was like, oh, but like Caesar salad, like poutine, like, curry chicken. It was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever I've ever ate. And it's funny, that was literally 3 months ago. And already I'm like, and it's like I'm missing that flavor. I'm missing the now. And, it's incredible what happens. I feel the food tastes better. I
Yeah.
feel, and again, I feel it's more nutritious. I feel it's more sustaining in my body
Yep.
when I feel it. And even if I'm drinking, my coffee or my cappuccino or my Resource 2.0, it's like I'm not just drinking it anymore. I'm drinking it. I'm like tasting it. I'm feeling as it goes down. Like it's really just things become more conscious. And don't get me wrong, I'm failing in many places.
Mhm.
I'm failing to be conscious in many different areas of my life. Like autopilot when I'm working.
Slow down,
So
baby. Slow down.
yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about that too, right? Like,
Yeah.
Dan, just take it
Yeah.
down a notch and everything.
Marinate.
Because
Marinate.
yeah,
Remember I
yeah,
said
and
that
you know
word
what?
on Monday. I was like,
Yeah,
Marinate, man. Marinate, man.
marinate. And
but you know
Ryan,
what?
it's
Kudos to you, brother, for acknowledging
thanks,
that,
bro.
though. Like,
Yeah.
no, I'm really
Well,
proud of you for
thank you.
understanding that. Like, we want the audience to understand as we're going through this book. This is just not a book, it's just a lifestyle as well. And understanding that no matter what you're going through, like, we could be talking about a business here. That's not what the intention of today's episode is about. We're talking about our truths right now. We're saying that, in our lives right now, like Dan's like talking right now to the audience that, yes, the one thing is working really well. The food is tasting amazing. The spices, everything, the nutrition is going amazing. But with that being said, there's other facets that I'm working on myself. So understand that we're always a work in progress. There's no finish line. We talk about career, right? There's no finish line career, right? Like, who cares about that? You got to worry about what's within. Everything comes from within, whether it's emotional selling, whether it's emotional. And that's why I love this book. So Dan, like I said, I want to acknowledge you for that, for saying that, like, there's other facets, and I know I got to be on autopilot. I got to pull the old Dan to DJ, from back in the day. So I'm gonna ask you this: what are you gonna do to not necessarily fix that? Because I don't believe like it's like a problem or anything like that. But what are you gonna do?
DJ, I love that.
Yeah. Because I remember those old sales chatter episodes. So I'm gonna ask you, Dan, what steps are you gonna take to understand that now? Like, when that happens, when you go into autopilot, what's gonna make you snap out of it and be like, and what are you gonna do differently?
So, I actually put this into place 2 days ago after our last conversation about it. Um, and what I'm doing is on my computer here. And if I could turn my camera, I'd show you. But right in the middle, I changed some of the sayings around, and I put a yellow piece of paper. So every time I look at my computer, out of my peripheral, I see that yellow piece of paper, and I taped it to my monitor. And it says, "Before you do anything, slow down." So it's like when I look, and that's my best way of forming a habit. So over the next 30 to 45 days, I'll continually see that, whether it be my sight goes down to it or in my peripheral, and it will eventually help me slow down. I've learned a lot about slowing down, Ryan, and it's come from going through what I went through. And when you go through something like that, you create, like, for months, all I did was create this list of things I want to accomplish in life, things I want to see, things I want to do, right? It was, as Eckhart says in the book, I was living for the future.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like I was, not necessarily the reality within, but I was using the future to say, okay, I'm going to get better because I'm going to do these things, which I think is a positive thing, without living in the future and like giving up the now to just, fantasize all day kind of thing.
Yeah.
When I started to get healthier, of course, what did I do? I got down on the starting line and I started to run as fast as I can towards those goals. Well, I very quickly fell flat on my face and was back in bed. And then I got up and I did it again. I fell flat on my face. And it was like, I posted this morning saying, like, learn the lesson and let that mofo go, like, quick. I understand about the whole get up and keep going, but there's a get up and then there's a sustainability. You talked about career when it's over. How many people get in such bad mental and physical health during their career that when they retire, they can't enjoy it?
Yeah. Well,
right? Like,
great story for that.
it's
Great story
crazy.
for that. I talked to, like, yesterday, I had a call that was supposed to be 15 minutes with a great friend, with a brand new friend. It actually turned into 2.5 hours. And we talked about that, where he was talking about, like, he's 65 right now, and he's like, I don't want to go to Paris. I live simple. I want to be able to. I did all that fun stuff when I was younger, and I was able to enjoy it, because he's like, money's nothing. Money's gonna come and go. And Dan, one thing you said here actually relates to like a part that I really connected with in chapter 4, and it basically says that this is on chapter 88. It says that it's called the inner purpose of your life's journey, and it says that I can see the truth of what you're saying, but I still think that we have a purpose in our life's journey. Otherwise, we just drift, and purpose means future, doesn't it? How do we reconnect? How do we reconcile with living in the present? And then what he mentions is that whenever you are on a journey, it is certainly helpful to know where you're going, or at least know the general direction of where you're moving. But don't forget, the only thing that is ultimately real about your journey is the step that you are taking at this moment. And I didn't we you and I didn't talk about this, but that's all that there ever is. Your life's journey has an outer purpose and an inner purpose. The outer purpose is to arrive at your goal or destination, to accomplish what you set out to do, to achieve this or that of which implies the future. But if your destination or the steps you are taking in the future, or sorry, if the steps or the destination you are going to take in the future take up so much of your attention that you become so more important, that becomes more important to you than the actual step you're taking right now, then you completely miss the journey's inner purpose, which has nothing to do with where you're going or what you're doing, but everything you have to do with how. So I just love that, when you're talking about, you want to kind of get off and things like that, and you're living in the future. It's just the one, like I said, I love this book, is like really taking away is that, what, you can go to the past, you could teleport to the past, you can teleport to the future, just don't make it a destination, don't build a house there, don't making, I know you're a carpentry guy, don't build a pool there, the sanctuary and all that stuff, just go there as a traveler, take an Uber, there, don't own anything, but, just looking at our inner and our outer purpose. And that's what's really making me understand that, those little steps that we're taking each and every day will get us to the future, right? And somebody kind of told me something today. I don't get into scripture that much, but I saw the same person I spoke with yesterday. He left me with the scripture, and it just made me everything. He says it's from Matthew 25:29. It's not turning to Bible study, by the way, guys. But it says, for whoever who has will be given more, and they will have it in abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken away from them. And that stuck with
you can
me.
get deep into that, right?
Yeah.
You really can. That's a hell of a passage, for sure. For sure.
So I can kudos from there. I'd love to get your thoughts on the inner and the outer principles, basically, of life.
Well, so here's one thing he said in chapter 4. He says, if you get the inside right, the outside will fall into place. And primarily, reality is within. Secondary is without. So to me, I look at that, and he goes on to say, like, hey, listen, darkness can't survive light. And, then I pushed pause, and I was like, oh, okay, hold on. I remember in chapter 2, he said, nothing ever happens in the past or will ever happen in the future. It'll always happen in the now.
Yeah.
So you're thinking in the past, and you're like, oh, well, this happened. No, but it happened in the now of the past. And that's a mind-blowing thing to stop and process in every step of your life. Because, for psychological reasons, he says, to be free of time is to be free of psychological need of the past for your identity and the future for your fulfillment. So, that Matthew scripture that you just read kind of aligns with that right away. Because, if you don't have and you consistently live in the past, well, I don't have, you never will have. Yeah. People have lots of stuff and they're miserable, probably because they don't live in the now. Everything is about the next. And, Layla Hermosi, actually, I saw a post from her this morning. She says, one thing that, the 3 big lies about life is I'll be happy when.
Yeah.
was the first one. I'll be happy when my business gets to 300 million. When your business gets to 300 million, I'll be happy when it gets to 5.
Yeah.
And that's not living in the now. That's always living in the future. Yep. And it actually contaminates the now. It really does. And he goes like, I don't know if you remember this part from, it was about a quarter of the way through chapter 4, where he says resentment contaminates those around you.
Yes.
Right. Because
I did. That one.
You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, so if you're always living for that, if that's where your mind is, not right here, right now, with the person you're with, like focusing on the person you're with. If you're, someone's talking and you're playing with your phone or you're doing something, you're not here, you're not present. And people can resent because they're not living in their world, right? You got to remember too, like we got social media these days, which we never had when I was a kid.
Yep.
You see all these other people getting this or achieving that or doing this, and it's very easy to get resentful. I've been doing this longer, how come I'm not there? And it's like all these things are very easy, and it's so harmful that it contaminates you and the people around you.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that was like that is true. Because I remember when I first started in this, Ryan, I was looking at people with Mercedes and I'm like, this person's never here. They're never selling. I'm working 12 hours a day and this person's got a Mercedes and I don't. It's like, yeah, the dude's been doing it for 15 years. You know what I mean? Like he's got a little, but anyways, I think I'm babbling at this point because
no, you're not. You're really not. No, you're actually hitting some really key points that I think is so important for anybody who's reading this or going to be going through this. Read chapter 4 and the big takeaways from there. So you're definitely not babbling. I think you hit some really key points that I really like about being about in the destination of the future and being right now each chapter is not just going to be about being right now. It's just going to be, there's going to be some techniques. I think this one was like mind techniques to kind of get rid of that. And
yes.
With us, Dan, when we look at what we kind of want to achieve, like my biggest thing was like kind of looking at the journey itself, right, and understanding that my journey's not built yet. As much bricks as I put, I might be a sidewind or a different way that I'm kind of going here. And one thing you just kind of said earlier was that sometimes we build houses or sometimes we look at the future so much because we just want to get there. But Dan, has anything ever happened in your life, and for the audience as well, that a tragic incident happened, right? And I will, not to be morbid about this, but I feel like death changes everything. Like you and I could have so many plans, we could book so many demos, we have our show and stuff like that. If anybody dies close to us, what do? We all like clear our schedules, we make time for those things. And that's just another thing that's coming to take part of time. So that's why I kind of get into the understanding of like nothing is solid or concrete, that is like months away or like weeks away or something like that. You always kind of have to keep following up because you got to prepare yourself. Not necessarily say that, hey, I'm just going to book time off and then in case anything happens, but just kind of like look at how life's trajectory is, right? Because like just one incident, look at you with you're going through your diagnosis and things like that. Last year was like, that came out of left field, it really came out of left field, and we kind of gone from there. But just getting back to this chapter 4, I love that you talked about the resentment, because that was one thing that I had highlighted down, talking about here. As for me, the biggest lesson I'm reading through while I'm going through this book and listening to this book is the shedding of that ego. I've said this many times, and if we all have an intention I think I said on the first episode, my intention while reading this book is get rid of or shed my ego. And I don't know why I have it, but it's something I'm actively working on. Right. So I feel like chip by chip, brick by brick, I'm chipping away at that. And it's like, it's an amazing resource like this.
Yeah. I start to look at things and I try to act like water. And the reason I say that is if you study water, I know it sounds probably pretty silly, study water, but water always has a destination to get to the ocean, right? Like water is attracted to the bigger bodies of water. That's the main goal for water, is to get to the bigger body. And no matter what gets in its way, and you talk about the egoic mind and ego and all that. So think of this for a second. Water is one of the most destructive forces on earth. Yeah. It's also what keeps us alive. right? So you have one end, very destructive force, massive ego. On the other end, it's lifeblood.
Yeah.
But the in between, the now, water will work its way around any obstacle by right now, because in the end, it's designed to get to the ocean.
Yes.
So if we have a big goal, a big dream, a big ambition, a big desire, I use Brendan Burchard's words: be bold, fierce, and unrelenting in chasing your dreams. But every step you make in the now, so you come up against thing, you go left, doesn't work, you go right. It might work, and then you climb another little step, you go right again, you climb another, you go left, and then all of a sudden you're over that obstacle, right? That's what water does. It doesn't get pissed off when it faces an obstacle. It just says, okay, which way am I going to go? So it takes the path of least resistance to go around the way it's going to go. And I think if we all, during every step of the now, come up to an obstacle, it's okay, what's the path of least resistance? Like, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel at every obstacle. Who's been through this to help me get through it?
Yes.
You know, and Tony Robbins says it great. He says, like, why, Google who's been through it and emulate what they did
Oh,
and
100%.
get through it, right? Like but we don't. We think that, we're special, we're unique.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're the
Oh,
one
no,
of
no, no.
one. We're the one of one, like we're,
Exactly.
yeah, I love that.
Exactly. And it's like, I'm never, I got to get through this on my own. Nobody can help me through this. This is me, and I got to get through it. And that's where the ego kicks in,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, I don't know about you, Ryan, but you know how many times I've learned, like, really been helped by people that have been in the industry 1, 2, 3 months, like
Yes.
really been helped. And I'll have a conversation with them and be like, and they're like, did I just say something that you okay? And I'm like, no, dude, you just solved what I thought was a complex problem for the last 3 months.
Yeah.
You solved it in 3 seconds. Thank you. And I've had so many students go, really? Like, you're the teacher, and and it's like, no, man.
No, we're
No,
all as long as we kind of take that mindset of like, we're always a student. We're always a student in the game.
always.
And time doesn't equal anything, right? And Dan, you were just talking about earlier in the episode about, working at a place and then, seeing the guys who've been there with the Mercedes in 15 years. And, time at a job, like our parents, they used to work at one place for 40 years, take 2 vacations, had everything like that. But it's not the same way anymore. We kind of move jobs, how our industry is based on, getting our salary and things like that. But one thing that you just kind of said was like the water. It can be good for you, it can be bad for you. Like my wife shared a TikTok video with me last night of like natural disasters going around the world right now. It's actually pretty messed up right now. Like there's a lot of landslides, a lot of flooding. There's a lot of stuff that it feels like the earth is like really upset. I think NASA said July was the hottest month since I think the 1800s, last record time. So then you look at what's going around you, right? And you're like, okay, well, let me figure out what's going to affect me and what's not going to affect me. And if it doesn't affect me, then leave it alone. That's the reason why I don't really watch the news. I don't watch the news anymore because like, like as you watch the news, the first thing they said is like, somebody got stabbed in Scarborough. Well, I'm sorry for that person, but at the end of the day, like that really has no bearing on my life because I don't know the person, or I'm not going to Scarborough, or like, why would I let that like take rental space in my head right from there? But it's not to sound like I'm a jerk or anything like that. But when we look at ourselves and like I said, this inner, my big takeaway is going to understand what's my inner purpose and what's my outer purpose. And then, like you said, work from the inside out and then kind of figure that out. And one thing, Dan, that you also mentioned is like, if you're going through a struggle right now, find somebody. But then on the flip side of that, if you sense someone's going through something that you've been through, be the first person to help. Yesterday, I know I mentioned 3 times, but like it really stuck with me, that 2.5 hour call with Randy. The first thing he said to me, Dan, was like, I have a 10,000 like subscriber base on YouTube channel that I started 2 months ago. How can I get you up to that? That was the first thing he said to me. And that's what it laid into a 2.5 hour call. Normally these guest meetings are usually about like 15 minutes. Okay, this is our show, blah, 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 get you on when you're available. No, it wasn't about that. It was about me. And when you make it about the other person, whether it be emotionally selling or emotional conversations, with your partner, don't think about yourself, because anytime you think about yourself, you're talking about your ego. You talk about the things that I can do, I can do for you. It's just like, what does that person really want? Because is it an emotion or is it a feeling? because 9 times out of 10, Dan, anything that you spew out, it's always going to be a feeling and not a true emotion.
That's powerful, buddy. That is true. I like that. Wow.
Man, we had Fridays, man. I love this. I really do. Like, I do love
Buddy,
Monday Fridays, but I think this.
I think Steve hit the nail on the head right there.
Yeah. There we go, buddy.
You know, wow, a lot of great comments, eh?
Yeah, man. Shout out to Lisa. Shout out to my wife. Shout out to Steve. So Daniel, as we're gonna wrap up, what are 2 things that you learned from chapter 4 that you're gonna implement into your life going forward?
So for me, obviously the note, I'm really focusing on that. If I get the inside right, the outside will fall into place. You know, dealing with the frustrations that aren't really frustrations, dealing with some, you know, that, I mean, I don't think I'm that far off. Like I know I've got a road to travel, but it's not like I'm oblivious, because I find myself catching myself now more than ever. Again, I think we talked about this last week, or the week before, where it was like, dude, since we've been reading this, like I'm feeling it more, like it's injecting more into our life, right?
I'm
Like
a different person, man. I'm a completely different person. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. But one thing that I am going to focus on for the next week is when he said there's 2 types of unconsciousness, ordinary and deep. And he goes, you're always in one of the 2. And think of it like sleeping. You're either like in that deep dream state or you're in a sleeping state.
Yeah.
And I was, and it's funny because when I first heard it, I was like, no, I'm not always unconscious, but your body is always doing something unconscious. Yeah. I'm not focusing on breathing right now. Not at all. But we're breathing. And it's like, so it's like, holy crap. Like, and it's just stopping for a minute and going, whoa. So I'm going to try and live in the ordinary unconscious as much as possible instead of the deep unconscious. And again, you know, Ryan, this is where I start asking the questions. And I'd really love somehow for us to get Eckhart on the show. Because one of my first questions is, does deep unconscious, does that represent being in the zone? Because a lot of people talk about the zone. And I don't know if this book, because it's been a while since I read it, but I don't know if this book actually gets into the zone. Because there's times like you have where you start working or you start doing something that you love, whether it be playing music or, you know, drawing or creating on Photoshop or doing anything. And all of a sudden you look up and like hours have passed. Right. I do it when I'm editing videos and I'm
busy. There we go. Yeah. Editing. Yeah.
But I'm getting all sorts of cool things happening. I'm like, oh my God, look at that transition. Look at the title. Look at the way that flows in. I love the way I did that. You know, I love the way I did the screenshot and it's like, before I know it, 5-6 hours have passed. So my question then becomes, and this is the big question I'm going to ask myself all week, and I'm probably going to go down a couple of rabbit holes and send you YouTube videos on it. But it's like, is that deep unconsciousness? Or is that another level? Is that an acting in the now, but being so in tune with the now that you lose track of time? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, brother. I'd love to find the answer to it, though. And I tried to tag Eckhart Tolle on my post this morning, but he's not on LinkedIn. I can't find him on LinkedIn. So.
No, we're gonna manifest this, man. We're gonna get him for the for the last. We'll get him for a book. We'll get him on. We'll get him on. We said the same thing about Jeb Blunt. We got him on Jeb Blunt. There's so many people. Look at Tuesday, right? We had a guest pull out on Tuesday, and God, the higher power, decided to give us an amazing guest yesterday. You know, so
yeah,
you know, we're gonna make it happen, man. This is we got to keep about that moment. Like we said, man. That coming back to that quote, man. We got to keep giving, and we got to keep having stuff, so we'll get abundance, right? So we're giving this out. Yes. I'm just smiling throughout the whole process with everybody because, like, I love that we're reading the same content, and then like when you're saying stuff, and I'm pretty sure when I'm saying stuff as well, you're like, yeah, I remember reading that, and just kind of connecting. So this, honestly, this feels like school again in a very good way. I loved school, by the way. Like, I was never a thing, but I loved English class. You know, when you'd all like read the same book. Like, I still remember Frankenstein. Frankenstein, the Chrysalids, Hatchet, all those amazing books, and then going through it with your class, right? So, like Lisa says, no coincidences. I probably said that 5 times yesterday. There's no coincidences.
Yeah.
That's my number one thing. I think my 2 words of the week is no coincidences and marinate, Dan, marinate.
Marinate. I have to learn how to marinate because all I think is I'm all in. Let's
Well,
go.
you're
I'm
a
all
Swiss
in. Let's
chalet
go.
guy, man. So think about this. If you went to go get your normal chicken Caesar salad and they just gave you that salad right there, it wouldn't taste as good when it's marinated in that rotisserie, right? So gotta let that
Yeah, I've actually turned to quarter chicken dark meat with 4 chalet sauces.
man,
But they're diet sauces, so I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's diet
They don't
fries,
count. It's
diet
just like water.
sauces.
It's water, man. It's water.
In the end, it's just water and powder, buddy. Got
Water.
it. That was awesome, brother. I love it. Love it.
Yeah, let's take it home, my man.
Let's take it home. I actually, you know what? When that last comment that you had, I was about to hit the outro because that was like a ball drop. That was like not even a mic drop, man. That was like, Times Square on New Year's Eve ball drop. So we'll just head home.